It's 12 o'clock. Today, I don't know if you all saw, but today is an open Q&A day. So we can open it up for questions if anybody has anything that they want to go through. So any topics fair game? Looks like folks are joining here. All right. Nobody's got questions or anything they want to walk through today?
I have a
Actually, I
kind
do.
of general question.
Sure. Hassan, we'll start with you, and then Julia, I think I heard you as well.
So I'm still fairly new to this whole Salesforce thing, right? And I'm getting my foundation set, but formulas and criteria. What's that step in between to where you kind of master what those things look like? Because I can do some basic formulas and set some things in place, but to know these overarching formulas and what they would look like and what all I would need. So what's that part in between to where you can kind of get to learn that?
Yeah, so you're talking about like formula fields, like when you're creating formula fields?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if there's any like trick or magic, but here, let me share my screen. I'll kind of show you what I do. And again, I always feel like I need to turn off the waiting room before, but it's too late. They don't let you do it after. Hold on one sec here. Okay. Yeah. So one thing that I do um, is here. Sorry, I was less than prepared for logging into a Salesforce org. There we go. All right. So one thing that I do is I don't think that you can just know, or I don't think there's like a direct path to just say that, going from not really knowing all the different formulas and all the different things you can do to just knowing, except to say, you just need to get in there and just try it out, right? So a lot
Right.
of times when I try to build formula fields, or if I'm not sure if it's even possible to build something, I just kind of log in and go through the formulas themselves. Here, let me share my screen. I'll show you what I mean here. So like if I were to go over to the opportunity object, here, let's go to opportunity, and let's just create a field here. So if we go into the fields, go to new, and we'll go to formula, and next. All right, so let's just create a test field, and let's just make this text. All right. So what I'll do is, if I'm not really sure, first of all, I always go to the advanced formula because I just think it's cooler to have this functions thing over here on the right side.
Right.
But going through the categories kind of line by line and just reading the descriptions that pop up here, I think that's a huge like start, right? So for example, if I'm doing something with dates and I need to do some kind of date math or figure out something, you know distance between two dates or something like that, just go in that date time function, and then as you kind of click through them, it's got the descriptions down here. Um, just trying to figure out like what each of these things does, and then the other thing. You think about these formula fields, they can get pretty complex with different pieces and you're using different functions and whatnot. A lot of times what I'll do is, even though I only need one formula field, I might create like three or four, right? So like each part of the formula, the final formula you're trying to create, it might have some complexity to it and you're not sure if it's working right. I'll create each one of those as its own separate field just to make sure that I'm getting the right value, right? So if I have to do something like, today's date plus 14 days, and then use that and compare it to another date. Before I do that comparison part, I'll create a formula field that's like today's date plus 14 and just make sure that I'm getting the exact thing that I expected I'm getting. You know what I mean?
Right.
So try to take the big complexity and turning into smaller pieces. That's something I find effective, for the formulas. Anybody else have any thoughts as far as Hassan's question here? Yeah, I think that would be my only advice. Just kind of try and break it up into manageable pieces and then put it all together once you've confirmed that each piece is what you expect. The other thing I'll say too, and this is sometimes this could be less than effective or less effective than you might like, but even if you go down through these things, like let's just say that we go to logical and is null, right? Even if this
Mm-hmm.
little section down here isn't as helpful as you would like, they have this help on this function link. And this documentation that they have on this page, like the help site that actually comes up here, and of course it's going to make me log in and do all this crazy stuff. I have no idea if I can log in. This is a scratch org that I'm in here, so I think that's why it's yelling at me here. All right, so 15 layers of authentication later here. I should be able to get to the help and training site. I don't know why that's password protected, but I guess it is. Any second here. Okay. So yeah, so help in this function, it should take you to the help and training, and usually what they have is they have a little bit more detailed explanation here, and then we've had some examples in there as well. So this is something I rely on, especially for stuff like different formula things you can do in reports like parent group val and previous group val, things like that, that I don't use every day. A lot of times I have to go to this site and they'll give you some details about how to use those and examples of how to use them, things like that. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Yes,
Hey, Bill,
thank you.
also wanted to throw it out there. I've been trying to find it, but I can't remember now. But I know a couple months ago you had a guest on who was talking about formula fields, and we have their slides to share. So if someone's interested in that, you can probably get that link to check out those slides.
Yeah, let me see if I can grab that. If I go to our YouTube channel here, we have that. That was Steve Moe that gave his presentation. All right, so if I search for resource here, I'll pull up that actual presentation. I'll post it into the chat here.
Cool.
All right. All right. So, Julie, I think you had a question as well.
Yeah, my question is not nearly as technical as that one. I was just going to just introduce myself. Julie Matheson, I'm the director for Insider Threat. Finishing up my third week at Salesforce, so still very new. Just happy to help wherever I can. I'm still becoming familiar with the different organizations and the different equality groups. So anywhere I can help with military trailblazer, any of the vet groups, prior Navy. So happy to help wherever I can.
Oh, nice. Well, welcome. You said this is your third week at Salesforce.
Yes.
That's awesome. Very cool. All right. And I just posted that link, by the way, for the formula presentation that we had with Steve Moe. So if anybody's interested in that, and just more generally, I can post a link for the entire playlist as well, which you should be able to get from that link. But
so where'd you post the link?
It's in the chat. Yeah, it's here in the chat.
I got Katrina's link, but I don't see yours. Maybe I'm.
Oh,
maybe I got here late. Maybe I got here late.
Nah, know what it is?
Maybe you posted it to somebody individually.
Yeah, I was posting it to everybody in the waiting room. So they're all like, "What? Why is he sending this to me?" Okay. So there's the main playlist of all of our recordings from previous sessions, and here is specifically the one about formulas. So there you go. All right, cool. Any other questions? Anything you guys want to go through?
I have a question, actually.
Sure. Yeah.
If you have a moment. So the company I'm with is asking for a lead conversion in Flow. And so converting the lead in a Flow, and everything that I've looked up has said that it requires an Apex call out. But my company is like, no, this should be already written. This is something that's surely been done before. Could you give me any guidance on that? Because Professor Google has not been helpful so far.
Quick question. When we say converting the lead, so do they want to leverage kind of the standard Salesforce conversion, or is there some type of custom logic that you have to apply when you're converting it?
I'm not sure. I think they want something custom because it's an appointment, a record trigger flow that's converting the lead, and it's creating a link between this custom object and appointments. And it's just, I'm in over my head a little bit. So any guidance whatsoever would be helpful.
All right, let's kind of see what we can do here. So I'm going to share my screen. Here's our playlist with my dorky profile picture there. But if I go over to my test org that we have that I was just creating that formula, let's actually go into Flow and see what they have, if there's any kind of out-of-the-box actions. And if there isn't, we can go through a quick example about how you could essentially convert a lead and do some custom logic there right from Flow. So let's do new Flow. And I'm going to move this up top. Okay, so in this case, let's do I won't do this one as a record trigger. Let's do this as a screen flow, and we'll actually put it right on the lead layout. Essentially, the logic would all be the same, but this will just give us a little bit of flexibility with how we run this. And that is, of course, assuming this page renders. There we go. Okay, so we'll do a screen flow, do freeform. And because this is a screen flow, just kind of set this up. The first thing I'm going to do is go into Manager, and I'm going to create a new resource. And this is going to be a variable that we're going to call record ID. And this is what we're going to use to pass in, the current lead that we're looking at, the ID of that current lead. So we'll make it a text field. We'll make it available for input. And then when we drop this flow into the page, it'll say, what do you want to put in that variable? And we'll say the record ID. Okay, so that's step one. Step two is we're actually going to get the lead whose record ID that we just passed in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a get records. This is going to be get lead record. All right, and the object type is going to be lead. And we're going to get all the leads where the ID is equal to that record ID variable that we just created. And we only need one. There should only be one lead with that ID. This is probably a good point to point out that when you're doing this in an org for a client, or this is part of a requirements discovery call, that kind of thing, there's probably a few steps that we're skipping. And if you attended 2 weeks ago when we had Paul of you talking about discovery and all the questions you should be asking, definitely want to make sure that we map out all the requirements and the use case. But for now, just based on that little bit that you told me, we're just going to come up with an example and just kind of fumble through this, right? So keep in mind, there's probably a better way to do this, but this is just me kind of fumbling through, okay? All right, so.
Bill, that's perfectly fine. This is actually for the ERD. We're just sketching it out as a part of the discovery process. So that's perfect. I don't need exactly, set yet.
Yep. All right, so we get the lead record, and then I said that let's just see if there's any kind of built-in actions that have to do with lead conversion. So I'm just going to throw action over here, and I'm just going to type in lead. And the only one I see there is new lead, and if I type in convert, nothing there either. So I'm just going to say I don't think there's a native conversion. Unless anybody's aware of it, I'm not really aware of that. So in this case,
in my opinion, most of the time, the pushback on something like this is mostly related to, why the executive is asking for something for Salesforce to do that Salesforce has learned over 21 years. It's a bad idea. There are a certain set of bad ideas in the world. That's why there's not certain things. So I'm in the camp right now, Bill. I really admire you for taking this on. I'm in the camp of going, man, this sounds like a bad idea from an executive who had too much time to think about what could be done with a different flow after conversion. Because there are things about converting a lead that if you do it automatically could cause problems. I'm just a skeptic. I'm glad that you're willing, Katrina, because I like telling executives no.
Now, there is something to be said. There was one use case we ran into where, standard lead conversion, you convert a lead into an account, a contact, and an opportunity, right? But in one particular use case that one of our clients, they had leads and they were converting it into a custom object that represented a person, right? And there was reasons for that, why they were doing that they wouldn't want a lead to go directly to an account, contact, and opportunity. So this might be one of those use cases. You never know, right? But
I got it.
Yeah, I mean, in any case, let's just say that we'll give them a custom UI where they can convert the lead and do some custom things to it during the conversion process. So in this case, we got our lead record, and let's just say from that lead, we're going to create an account and a custom object. I have an object in here called maybe a resource record, right? So it converts from a lead to a resource. So we get our lead record. I'm going to say create resource from lead. So we're going to create one record. We're going to use separate values. This is going to be a resource record. And we're going to set the resource name equal to the lead from get lead dot name, full name. Then maybe I'll set another field here the team name is going to be equal to the lead company name. All right, so lead company, and there's just a few other things that are part of my app that you don't have to worry about, but we're just, I'll set these just so we don't get any kind of weird errors, but we'll say min hours is 34 hours a week, 45 hours a week, done. All right, so let's just say, again, part of this custom lead conversion process, we are going to take the lead, we're going to create a resource record, and then you want to notify, somebody that this lead has been converted, right? So you might throw an action in there that was, like an email action, send email. So send email to whoever, right? And then of course we can go through this. We can set all the different email options that we were going to generate, right? So if this was part of your logic, we could fill all this out. But just for now, we get our lead, we create a resource record from it. Now, the part that I'm not fully sure of is if you have a lead and you go through the conversion process, there's a few things that it does automatically for you. Like it'll set the is converted to true, and there's some other things that it does on the lead. I don't know how you do that in a custom flow. So for example, like I don't know if we can go in here and say, set lead to converted, something like that. So like lead is converted. Like, is that even a thing that we can say true? I don't know. So we'll give it a whirl and see what happens here. So update lead. All right, so we get our lead record, we create a resource from it, we set that lead to converted, and then we update the lead so that the value is saved. All right, so again, not saying this is the right way to do it, or if it's the appropriate way to do it, but let's just see if this will actually work here. So custom lead conversion, no, that's not even close. Conversion, here we go. All right, so we'll save that. Let's activate this thing. And then I should be able to go back to here and go into our lead, and let's just see if this works. All right, so if I go to leads, I don't think I have any leads in this org, but if we go to new, so I'll give it a name that's something I'll remember. So Pete, Mick, Peterson, Pete Inc. All right, so we'll save that lead record. And now that we actually have a lead, we can add this flow, this custom lead conversion onto the page. So we'll edit the Lightning page and we'll drag that flow onto the page. All right, so drag that there. Hey, I'm just curious.
You make it look so easy.
Well, just curious real quick. Has anybody edited a Lightning page and not seen this come up to say moderate? I've never seen it say anything. Like I've never seen it in the green, never seen it in the red. It's always like just prior to the forward, it says moderate.
Have you ever tried taking off all the components to see if it would be a good page then?
Yeah, I think it's still moderate at that point. So I'll bet you $5 is moderate. We'll try that. In any case, all right. So I add this. We add this flow onto the page. This is the piece where we had that record ID available for input. So in this case, we're going to pass the actual ID of the current lead that we're on into that variable, and that's how the rest of the flow is going to work. But we'll save this. We'll activate the page. Then I'll have to remember to add this to my exclude list for my manage package, just so I don't package this by mistake. All right, so there we go. So now we have this flow on the page. So we'll actually see if this will work now for custom lead conversion. All right, so, I guess we forgot one key thing on our flow, which is a screen. So we added this, and it basically just ran through the logic, which is not ideal, not what we want to do. We want to give it some kind of wizard, but the fact that it actually ran, that should tell me that if everything worked appropriately, I should have a resource in here called Pete McPeterson, which I do. And if we look at that, it put the team in there as his company, and I shouldn't have navigated to this because if I go back, I think it's going to create a duplicate. But let's just check one thing here. So if we look at this lead, and if you're not using this, if you're a Salesforce admin, if you're not familiar with the Salesforce Inspector, this is a great tool. So I'm looking at this lead, and you can see, like, we don't have a lot of information on the actual record layout, But if I go to the Salesforce Inspector and go to Show All Data, it'll bring you to this pretty awesome screen where it shows you every single field on the lead, regardless as to whether or not it's on the page layout. And what I want to look at here is converted, and that's still set to false. So that I think is going to be a limitation. So if you're using flows to do some kind of custom lead conversion process without using Apex or anything else, converting it, you need to have some way to indicate that it was converted. So maybe that's a custom checkbox or something like that. But me setting the value of it is converted to true didn't actually set it. So there's got to be some other mechanism to keep track of what was converted and what's not converted. But yeah, Katrina, I don't know if that's helpful or if that's kind of what you were looking at, but custom lead conversion where instead of creating a account contact and an opportunity, creating something custom based on some logic from the customer, it's possible, but there's, some things that you have to kind of figure out based on, their use case.
Yeah, no, that was actually quite helpful just to see you run through that and to see where to look. And thank you, Dan, for the resource in the chat too. Just knowing which direction to head really helps me. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And just one final note there. I actually had a customer this week that was on Essentials Edition, and one of the first I've ever worked with that had Essentials. And if you thought working in Professional Edition was limiting, Essentials is insane, right? So
it's super standard. That's all it is standard, and a lot of limitations. But
yeah, but let's just say you had somebody that was Essentials or Professional, and you didn't have the ability to create Apex, and you couldn't find some package to install that had the logic exactly as you needed. Maybe that would be a compelling reason that you could create some kind of custom conversion logic using Flow. And again, not using the out of the box like is converted and all that stuff that we talked about, but creating your own custom checkboxes and then, using Flow to build the exact type of logic that you want to do the conversion. I can see how that could work. So, and I guess, this could definitely be one of those that, we could debate on as to whether or not it's a good idea, but if you need to, you could do it probably.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah, well, my problem is I'm an intern and I'm just sitting in, and so they were like, "Can you go find this?" So I don't want to come back empty-handed.
Add me to the call. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. But from a technology perspective, I like to explore what we could do. So well, again, I hope that was helpful.
That was good to work through it.
Yeah,
Katrina, good for you, engaging in it. I'm not kidding. I know, sorry, Bill, but a lot of new people, I'm even scared to hit in. I teach the admin class for Salesforce and Marivis and all those other things. And I admire anybody who's willing to take the risk to jump into something and dig around and find the answer. So that's good. That's good DNA in there, and everybody could take a lesson from that, even me. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just jumped in the middle, but are they expecting you to come back and be like, this isn't a great idea. You should just use conversion. Is that part of the internship? They're trying to see if you will stand up and say what should be right. Yeah,
that could be a component. I've just gotten pushback every time I've said I don't see the answer natively, and I started to reference Apex being used as a call out instead, and they're like, no, you can find this, keep going. So I just want to make sure I've explored all avenues first.
Yeah. Now, Katrina, I don't want to go down another rabbit hole here, but just something that with this conversation that kind of clicked in my head. Something else to consider is maybe there's a combination of two things that you could do, right? You could use the standard out of the box conversion, and then to your point, using a record triggered flow on that is converted field to do something else. So for example, you're going to create an account and a contact, and you want to schedule an appointment or do something else with the record. You could do it that way. I won't go too far into details, but if I just share my screen again, let's take this goofy flow that I created without a screen and set that aside for a minute. But let's just say that you wanted to go through the standard conversion, but then do some other stuff. The way that we might structure that would be to create a new flow and go to record triggered flow, free form because we're cool kids here. And then we'll say this is going to be on the lead object. When a record is created or updated, and let's just do actions. I consider this before and this after. So let's do this as an after. And then we would say, okay, for the criteria, let me jump back in here. For the criteria, we would say where is converted equals, I don't know why it does that, where is converted equals true. So then you can have some kind of process or some kind of flow that does something after the lead has been converted using the standard Salesforce conversion process. So that might be something to consider as well.
Yeah, that would be a better standard approach and a way, that would solve the problem. Because if they, and here's my executive pushback moment. If they say, well, I don't want it in one button. Well, I want to be 6'6". So how are we going to handle that? Like, I get it, but if you do it wrong, if we fight our way to do it wrong, what other problems is that going to cause, right? So.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about painting yourself in a corner too, like, creating a lot of custom processes to mimic something that Salesforce does natively. You might find it might not be a big deal now, but as it grows and as they get more users and they want to start leveraging more of that standard Salesforce functionality to get that better return on what they're already paying, building all that custom stuff that might lead you in a position where now you got to like roll it back or like migrate it to something else later on. So
wouldn't you need to compare the is converted to the prior version of is converted?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I was thinking about that, but yeah, you're right. If you're in this, when a record is created or updated and we say is converted equals true, if we converted a lead the first time, that would work perfectly. But the next time you go to change like a field on the converted lead, it might cause this to fire again. So we don't necessarily have to check the previous value, but we might just say when a record is updated to meet the conditions. So that would have the effect of only running it the first time versus every single time the lead is edited if that was already set to true. So good catch there.
I missed a little bit on this flow that you're showing right now, but you could also, depending on the record that's newly created, so the contact, the account, or the opportunity in your lead conversion, you could then take the action on the appropriate object. Because remember, a lead is a combo meal, right? I just used that analogy for the first time, but it's a combo meal instead of a specific kind of record. It's a business card, really, right? It's got a little bit of company information, a little bit of personal information, but not enough information to do business with. It's not a business record. So in the conversion process, you're converting that business card into records that are more robust. What do they really want from the lead? The lead is an expense. Who cares about that? What do they really want to attach as a result of that conversion? I would take it from the contact, the account, or the opportunity that's probably going to be at the source of what you really want in the future anyway. So converting the lead, naturally doing that thing, and then do whatever action on the next record that's appropriate is a much cleaner logic and a much more appropriate way to do it. But a lot of people make that mistake with leads, matter of fact, in the languaging of it at all. It's one of my pet peeves, by the way. Sorry. Trigger alert.
No, it's great feedback. Yeah, so either, doing it right off the lead when it is converted, doing it on the end result record, like the account or contact. Again, there's probably like 40 ways that we could probably address this. But I hope with all that, I hope you have something that can help you with the use case here you're trying to address. Katrina.
Yes, thank you. No, this is all tremendously helpful because I've just been kind of aimlessly researching. So this gives me some areas to specifically look into. So thank you for your thoughts and input. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you get stuck or you have any kind of questions, I'll put my contact details in the thread here as well, so feel free to reach out. All right, let's see, any other questions? We'll open it back up. Does anybody have anything else that they want to go through?
I have a question about, we send out notifications to employees about a status of opportunities, and we use a batch class to generate this, and we use the target ID of the user to send the email out so we don't consume limits. But we send out like 40 or 4,100 emails, and in the batch is, I know you can do 10 emails limit per transaction, is that correct? Or how do we, in other words, how do we not exceed our email limits per transaction in a batch class. Does that make sense? Because normally, if I were to just generate a program, an Apex class to generate 15 emails, I would hit the 10 email limit per transaction. In the batch class, does sending out, because we have 4,100 and it hadn't been working from previous people that wrote it. And I'm trying to debug it to make sure that we don't exceed limits. So do I limit the batch size of the batch when it runs to 10? Just can't find any information on it.
Yeah. So what I want to look at first is that batch limit or per transaction limit, because you're right. If it's 10 emails per transaction, one way that you can limit and make sure you're not hitting that is to just lower your batch size. But let me just ask you a question. The 4,100 emails, is that 4,100 employees are all getting one email, or could one person be getting like 10 emails?
Well, it's opportunities. So there's, and then we send out emails to the team members. So one opportunity could have 3 team members. So out of 4,100 opportunities, we could probably have 6,000 or 7,000 total emails. And some employees could get the same, or could get an email, but for a different opportunity.
Huh. And how often are these emails going out?
Well, they used to try and send this out every night, and it hadn't been working for 2 years and nobody noticed, but now it's important. So
I feel like that's the point where you ask, is this the right way to do things, right? And again, not knowing too much about the use case itself, I mean, definitely we could explore the technology aspect of how you would do this, batch Apex, limits, all that kind of stuff. But, is there a better way to do that? Like, could it just be a subscription to a report that would have the details that they need that would just go to their inbox? They could subscribe if they want it, but no if they don't. Like, it just seems like that's a lot of emails to be generating a day just to give people updates on an opportunity record,
Right, and I understand that. It's just I'm in the bottom of the food chain of designing this. My job's to fix it. And
yeah.
So we corrected the where clause, but just 4,100 opportunities and then times the number of opportunity team members is how many emails get generated. So before they used to use the user's emails and we'd exceed our daily limit whenever this was running years ago. And then I changed it to using the user ID on set target object ID, and that took care of that. But I think we're getting CPU timeouts or we're not getting errors. We're not getting anything logged.
What was the use case for that? This whole project you're working on right now?
Well, for each opportunity, it's for doing loans, and the government has laws on how fast. You have 30 days once you receive a loan packet to give a response, otherwise you're in violation of Reg B laws. So this email alert is to keep the loan processors current with all their activity. And
why not use, is Chatter not working?
My company has not authorized Chatter because of federal. It's a bank, and
right.
So we have all regulations on Chatter can't. For some reason, Chatter can't be documented or
can't be
stored.
Reported upon. Can't be reported and stored.
Yeah, so we can't use chat. I thought about using cases, and then each user would get cases, and then managers could look at the caseload and see who's doing their job. But it's not for me to change the process. But I wanted to come up with.
You could come up with, why not have a last activity date formula field that changes something if they're getting close to the limit, as opposed to doing something every time there's, or like solve the individual problem like a case. But I've seen when I did a project for Freddie Mac, they use cases and opportunities as project management records, not because they didn't really sell and they surely didn't solve problems as a government agency, but they they are project records. Leads, cases, and opportunities are all project records, right? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And cases are really built to manage timing and escalations and all those other kind of things. It might be a better way to do it.
Well, I like your idea of the last activity date, because then we could just look at anything that hasn't been done or anything within the last 14 days or something, rather than going back to the history of time.
Sure.
And cut down the number.
Or you could, if the rule, there's two things you could do. If the rule is you have to communicate to the customer at some point in time, just send an automatic email and put some data in there that looks like, that meets the government requirement that you sent the email, and then go get a stick and beat the loan processor on the head a little bit and say, here's how you use a list view and stop being a ding dong. Really,
sure.
I say that jokingly, but there's a lot of missed opportunities with list views and reports and just, the ways to manage yourself inside the system as a user. And
the Reg B law is 30 days and you have to have a credit decision. So it's either a turn down or you're approved. So
cancel them all at day 29, and then that makes the loan processor look bad. And that way, do an automatic cancellation.
Now, I don't know if that's the way to do it, but just kind of looking through some of the limits here. I think this was the limit that you were talking about, right? Here, let me go back up here. So is this one that you're looking at, the total number of send email methods allowed?
Right, per transaction.
Yeah.
So
now keep in mind, it's been a while since I've done these kind of sending out emails via Apex, but from what I understand, it's a lot like, just for example, like a DML statement. Like there might be a limit of, just for argument purposes, a limit of 10 DML statements per transaction. But that doesn't mean that you can only insert 10 records. Like you can build your list and then do one DML statement that inserts them all at the same time. I'm pretty sure send email works the same way, where you can build a list of the emails you want to send, and then you execute that one send email at the end of the transaction that sends them all out.
That's what I do. I have a list of single email messaging whatever. I use a list and then I send the list out in mass.
Yeah.
But I will work with changing to last activity date rather than just anything that hasn't been closed yet, to limit the records. And then I'm going to I'll play with the batch sizes and see if I get any activity. It's just that in a developer sandbox, I don't get enough activity to hit any limits. So,
well, remember, these are, specifically this was a per transaction limit. So that's less about how much activity is going on in the org and what you're doing in that one specific transaction, right? So, and then the other thing is within Apex, they have there's the limits class where you can actually query as part of your transaction. You could, query and, write debug statements about, how many are we using? How many do we have left, within the limits of number of email transactions? Are you familiar with that limits class?
Well, I'm familiar with the limits class, but I'm not, what I've found is you have to reserve emails to see if the count will, if you're going to exceed your count. And I didn't see a specific anything where you can get your email invocations. I've looked at that one.
Yeah, this is what I was saying. Like you can see how many have been called already, and then what is remaining that's allowed to be called. But somehow using that as part of not necessarily the logic itself, but as far as your troubleshooting to see, as you're running through your logic, are you hitting any of those limits? Let's see, what else here? So these are all, just those two, it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
I played with those and the information returned wasn't, but yes, thank you.
Yeah. Greg, one thing I would ask you, as you go through this, if, once you have a solution and you figure this out, I would love to hear kind of a report back to see what you did to address this and how it worked.
Sure.
That'd be great.
I'll do that.
All right, cool. Anything else? Any other topics anybody wants to go through?
So I just got my admin cert, and I'm.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, but a while back, I had a friend of mine come to me with the nonprofit, and they said, "Oh, we have the Salesforce org. Help us." And I was like, "Yeah, whoo, let's go." And I was like, "Oh man, okay, cool. Let me learn first." And so now I'm ready to dive back in, and they want to track. So they make candles, so they have their ingredients, they make the candles, they ship the candles. What's a good idea for like tracking that? Would I go with opportunities and try to tie them together? Would setting up custom objects be the way to go? Like, I've been trying to plot it out because I want, like, as they sell them, for it to click over and tell them to order inventory, which would keep them up to the proper levels. Any ideas, or am I just mumbling?
What? Can I ask a question?
Sure, yes, please. I'm
So
spitballing.
The objective is they sell candles. And
Mhm.
what are you trying to do with the candles?
So what we want to do is they want to track their inventory through Salesforce, so that they know what they have on hand, and then they want to know how many candles they can make with what they have on hand, so that when they sell the inventory, they can then order more supplies to make more candles.
So in other words, they need to keep track of the raw materials that they have on hand, and then as they're making stuff, they need to be able to deduct the raw materials from what's in the store, and
so that they can order it, so that the process rinses and repeats.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be some native Salesforce functionality around inventory and asset management and things like that. I'm not too familiar with that, and I'm sure that I'm sure I could fumble through and come up with a custom object model on how to keep track of this. But does anybody have any familiarity with like this inventory or asset management type functionality within Salesforce?
I mean, I understand the concept, but I think that's part of Manufacturing Cloud a bit. I think that's like a built-in part of Manufacturing Cloud that has that. And
but they're working off of the nonprofit with
I understand
10 licenses that are all admins, and I said you should fix that first, and they're like, yeah, but
we all like to have the wrong permissions. I know. I see.
So
how many?
Hi, this is Lena. So basically what you're talking about is basically the CPQ platform. So yes, you would have to start it off with opportunities and then lead into they're wanting to keep their resources in hand, tracking the inventories and stuff. So it is leading into your quotes, your price quotes. That is, as a nonprofit, they actually can get that. But you need to make sure that their opportunity management is set up for sales cloud, for sales cloud. Sorry.
Okay.
So, Lena, if I heard you correctly, did you say that nonprofits, they get access to CPQ? Is that part of like the free offering for nonprofits?
Yep, nonprofits
Wow.
gets a lot of things.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, they just have to check with our AE and just play around with it. Also, Michael, like they also get a courtesy just for you to test it out. Their courtesy license is for 30, I want to say 30 days, but you could also extend it. Just ask your AE.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much.
You're looking into the CPQ applications.
Okay, great.
That's what they're asking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's not a simple application, but that'll be a learning journey for everybody.
Yeah,
for sure. But it's great.
It is, and that's the one thing I want you to be cautious about, Michael, is making sure that their sales, their lead management, their opportunity management is set up correctly.
Okay. Yep.
Do they use sales like opportunities, or do they take orders like off of a Commerce Cloud? Because really the functional difference between B2B and B2C, I was having a discussion, is B2B, in the sales process, there's a stopping point where you negotiate, aside everything else, right? But in B2C, there's typically just a flow from awareness to consumption, and that's like an order taking process, right? So you don't confuse what an opportunity is And how I explain it in classes, for me anyway, is an opportunity is a record of a conversation for a sale. It's not the sale. The consummation of the opportunity, the endpoint is either they buy or don't buy. But in a business consumer driven model, at least a simple version of it is you post a product, they buy it at the price posted. Whereas typically you don't negotiate, right, with a B2C sale. But that's a distinction in the selling process. So if they're taking orders for those candles, or if they're having bulk orders, I might try to use the orders object as the end result, even if they do like sell bulk in an opportunity conversation with a church or something else, or however they're doing like a 500 deal and they're having a sales process around it. At the end of the day, the consumption of that candle raw material or however they track it could be tracked through the actual order, which would happen no matter how you get the sale. And then you could tie it to an inventory object that would somehow do a calculation mathematically that Bill could figure out.
It is from everything I know straight to consumer. So people go online, they order the candles, and I'll dive into that orders object. I like where you're going with that.
Because orders will be a result of either way it happens, and then you could create some type of report of sales at the end of the day or end of the week, and then the inventory manager in the warehouse could take that report, and I wouldn't do it automatic first. I would do it manually, just produce a report every day and say, okay, mark off your inventory. And then you can have it automatically deduct what those items, because what you're going to take a candle that has 4 parts, right? And then it's going to adjust 4 different quantities on your inventory, right? Yes. However that impacts it. So I would do it on paper first through the orders and make sure that you've got a good paper process first. Then you can start to see if you can track that in data so that it becomes now a report that they just have to send to, the wick manufacturer and the glass manufacturer, however you make your candles, whatever those order pieces are, then that'll flow out those specific types of data. So from the order to the inventory, and then that should work.
Yeah, I suggest you get on Lucidchart and actually take a look and do a kind of like a process flow of that. Michael, that's what I like to do with clients who are wanting to do CPQ and stuff, and actually sit down with them and actually walk through the process of their sales. So you're able to see where it's going, what decisions needs to make, what products need to, and I'm sure your client wants to track the tracking number, like even the wick of the candle, the type of, like, is it soil candles or is it like wax, things like that. So I would totally have you sit down with them and do a discovery and do a flow, or like a process flow on Lucidchart is what I like to do.
Is it Lucidchart? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, Lucidchart is just a diagram. You're doing a diagram flow, and you could also get that free also. It's a project management. So if you're wanting to like visualize things, what a process, it looks like and stuff like that, it's easy to do. Thanks, Katrina. Yeah, thank you.
I've been like writing on pieces of paper trying to.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
So when I'm in front of clients and stuff like that, when I'm in front of a client, I go ahead and pull up my Lucidchart and actually do the diagram. So it will totally help out. And they're able to actually see it visually, and they're like, no, actually, it actually goes to this instead of that. And you're able to provide that to your client also. They have a process in place.
If I could jump through my computer, I'd hug you right now, even though that's slightly awkward.
No worries.
So this is actually Lucidchart right here. We actually use this internally. I use it for building our app. As you can see here, this is like the data model for our custom managed package. But then as far as like new features and things like that we develop, before I just jump in and start building, which this might be hard to believe if anybody's watched these calls, but before I just jump in and start building, I will actually go through and map out, the customer journey or like, the flow about how they're going to use the app. And then from
Yep.
there, we start expanding that, turning that into a data model and actual features and screens and things like that. But super easy. I mean, it's super
Yeah.
powerful, but before you even get into all that power, I mean, just dragging rectangles and connectors. I mean, that's where you start, and then you can make it cool from there. But just mapping it out, simple.
That
Yeah,
is the
I
brain
agree
dump that I
with,
need.
yeah, I agree with Bill. I use this to diagram any of my clients', and when I start a project looking at the SOW and stuff like that, I map this out. And so when you're going into discovery of blueprint and stuff like that, it actually really comes in handy. So you have things in place and it makes it, again, some people are visual. So it's able to have this and also have documentation for your solution architect or your technical architect to see. But good for you. I'm a project manager and I love it. So
That makes my happy. That itches my happy spot. So thank you.
That Lena, that last thing you mentioned there about the technical architect, I'm of course now that we're talking about this, I'm not going to be able to find the site, but there is a technical architects. I think maybe it's I'm overcomplicating this, but architect.salesforce.com, is that what it is? But the reason why I wanted to point this out is that there's a site that that's not it. I'll find this.
You
And
gotta
I'll post a
you
link.
gotta put an R in there. You got architect.
Hey, listen, man. Seasoned English. Bear with me here. All right.
That's all right.
There we go. So so if you go into this site, architect.salesforce.com, they actually have a whole bunch of stuff in here, and they actually have some of these flowcharts and data modeling and all this stuff in Lucidchart pre-built for you. So let me see if I can find one of these. So for example, if we look at reference architecture gallery, right? There's a whole bunch of these things already built. Examples of levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 diagramming and all this kind of stuff. It really, I mean, some of these are specific, like for example, manufacturing cloud or manufacturing loyalty management capability map, whatever the hell that is, right? But it can give you some ideas in how you can visualize your specific use case, with your customer. So, click into this, and then a lot of them have a couple different ways you can export these. You can export them as, I think it's a PDF it comes down as, and then you can also just pull it directly into Lucidchart from here. And if you're one of the cool kids that's using Quip, you could even pull those Lucidcharts directly into Quip as well. So
exactly. I wasn't going there yet.
Oh, I love Quip. Quip is amazing.
Yeah, so you can pull those diagrams right in there.
Oh, thank you.
We're gonna. I will host a special, not this Saturday. I will host a special Q&A call just to convince me about Quip. Like I'm open to it, but I'm not convinced. But and it's mainly because I'm a small org by myself, and then I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my head around the pricing and how it works, and then why would I pay when I use it a lot? And I don't pay a thing, and I don't understand like the positioning of it in the world. Other than it does seem to work sometimes when you collaborate. But
it seems to work sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So one thing I'll say about Quip, right? So we went down that path. We use Quip right now. When we first got it, we were using it for everything. But now that we've kind of distilled our use case down a little bit, we have Quip set up on our opportunity object, our account object, and our contracts. So when we have an opportunity record, all of our meeting notes, all of our to-do lists, like all that kind of stuff is all documented within that Quip document. And then eventually, once they become a customer, we have an account document that's like our account plan, our future stuff that we want to do. It's, the beautiful thing about Quip is that it's free text and it can be integrated directly within a record in Salesforce.
Yeah.
When we sell service work, I go in there and I'll actually map out all the requirements. I'll put the high level design for each one of the requirements. I'll put all of our to-dos. When we have meetings, I have a section at the top that's got, the links to every meeting that we have and all the recordings. And then I share that with the customer. So it sits right on our contract. I give them a link to it. They can see all the progress. They can see what we've done. They can get to all the recordings. So that's where I think it's really powerful. Initially, when we had it, I started using it for keeping track of like to-dos and building out feature stuff for like actual development type work. But I've kind of leaned towards Trello for that now. I like the Kanban board. I like to be able to move stuff around, create a quick thing, move it up and down. So I think there's a lot of a lot of use cases where Quip is great. For me, it's free-form text sitting right on the record in Salesforce.
I get that. That is a value. What you just talked about was really what I've been considering about is how to use it in workflow, because you have to train, especially like I do implementations where I'm doing either projects or setup or something like that with a brand new customer or a new project with an existing customer, right?
Yeah.
And the company I work for, that we haven't integrated it yet. So I just have I feel like I got mittens and I'm trying to do brain surgery. I don't really understand how to use it in workflow. Like when I'm in my day-to-day, how do I build it? How do I build Quip into my routines?
Yeah.
Because I also have to build in the routine. Like I have to go back to that place enough and then be able to share it out to my customer or coworkers even, to get it into to basically habituate it and make it a useful tool.
Yeah. So leading back to Lena's point about diagramming this all out with Flow, that's actually with Lucidchart. That's something that we did when we were rolling out Quip. And what we decided was there's a lot of bottlenecks or pain points that would prevent us from using it and really getting the value out of that big price tag that we're paying. So one of the nice things about Quip too is that there's all kinds of actions that you get that you can leverage as part of flows, for automation. So we create an account record, and just by creation of that account, it's going to create a folder within the appropriate structure within Quip, for that account. It's going to create the account document, and it's going to create documents for any opportunities or contracts automatically and put them into that account folder. So at least that part of it, there's not a lot of manual steps. Like just by creation of the records, it's creating the documents for us. And then putting Quip on a tab where it's not like, well, I need to share this link or I need to send it to somebody for them to get access to it. If you're on the record in Salesforce, just click on that Quip tab and it's right there. And then, of course, all the other stuff where, if you mention people and you put a to-do item like a checkbox and you mention and put a date, like you'll have your task list and things like that. So I think it's pretty useful. I think we're really getting our money's worth out of it. But maybe it's not for everybody. I don't know.
I love it. So
I do too. I just didn't want to sound like a fanboy, Lena. I love it too. It's actually pretty great.
I'm just gonna say it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm trying not to sound too overly zealous. But yeah, it is really great. It really has. Oh man, I'm going to sound like a tool when I say this, but it has transformed the way that we manage our clients. So.
Well, Quip helped me and a couple other students. We just went through the ADX 201, and we had a running Quip document going up. So at least one of us was always focused in making adjustments and notes, and it helped all of us as a group.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other compelling thing about Quip, because there's a lot of alternatives, right? You got Google Docs, you got Dropbox, you got all these things. But the key thing about Quip is the fact that it's integrated into Salesforce. The templating, you can pull fields from Salesforce. You can mention contact records and contracts. Like everything is like completely integrated with the data, and I think that's what really makes it compelling. So.
And I could tell you from being in Salesforce, we use that a lot on the delivery side. So.
Yeah, and because of all these nice things I'm saying about Quip, if Lena, you want to pass the word that I should get like a free year out of that, that's cool too.
Noted.
So, all right. Well, it looks like we're at the top of the hour here. I hope this was a helpful call. I know we were kind of all over the place on different topics, but if anybody has any questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to reach out on our LinkedIn group. And if I don't speak to you guys, I hope you have a great week, great weekend, and we'll catch up next Friday.
Hey, fellas. You have your hospitality on Monday. I mean, your holiday, Valentine's Day on Monday. Don't forget to do something. You got a couple days to do something.
Nice reminder. Thank you.
Right? I know dudes need a reminder. Ladies,
I need a reminder.
I'm going to put it to do in Quip right now.
You have a Valentine. Let your Valentine know, because he's probably busy doing something else. So let him know.
Probably focus on the Super Bowl.
I need the reminder. I actually have it on my calendar.
There you go.
All right. Thanks all. See you.
Bye.